This might not be the most thrilling video that I've ever filmed, but it is, I think, one of the more important ones. And I'm going to be discussing what is the best way to understand chords, and going to show you some methods for massively expanding your chord vocabulary. When you're first starting out on the guitar, I think it can be helpful to memorize a bunch of common grips, and you just sit down and you get those shapes in the muscle memory. But there comes a point where this approach isn't particularly helpful. I mean, there are thousands of possible chord shapes that you could learn on the guitar. You're not just going to sit down and mindlessly try and memorize all of them. Much better, I think, is to understand how chords are constructed and to be able to visualize intervals clearly on the fretboard. And then you start to see the underlying logic behind these shapes, and it's much easier to memorize chords when you really understand what's going on. And then beyond that, once you get a bit more advanced, you get to the stage where you don't have to memorize thousands and thousands of shapes. Chords are these things that you can create and mold in real time. Let's get started then. In the first part of this video, I'm just going to go over my general approach. It's going to be a little bit of gentle music theory, and then in the second part of this video I'm going to show you a bunch of chords, and we're going to be getting into some more advanced ideas and concepts. So let's go. For me, there are three basic ways of understanding chords, and first and foremost, you've got a grip or a shape. And when you first start learning guitar, you're told that, for example, an A chord is played like this, and you put your fingers down at these particular frets on these particular strings, and you do that enough times and you just got that chord memorized. It's in your muscle memory, as they say, and of course that's important. You've got to have those basic chords automatically there right under your fingers in the beginning, and then beyond that you can go a little bit deeper. So we've got an A chord here, but what about the actual notes that we're playing? And some of you may know this stuff, some of you may not know this stuff, but inside this A chord we've got our root note A, which is the open fifth string. Then we've got an E, we've got another A, we've got a C sharp, and then we've got an E. So those are the actual note names involved. And then a further layer of understanding we can bring to these chords is an understanding of intervals. And for me, this is probably the most important one, and that's what I'm going to be spending the rest of this video talking about. And every chord has an interval formula, which is kind of a recipe for creating that chord. So if you're dealing with any major chord, it's made up of the root, the third, and the fifth, 1, 3, and 5. And what does that mean? Well, it's a description of the intervals found within that chord. And generally I think of it in terms of the major scale. The major scale is kind of our reference point, our measuring stick when we're talking about intervals within chords. So if we think about our A major chord, then the root note A, that's the 1, and then we can just count up an A major scale. If you want the third, you go A, B, C sharp is the third note in the major scale, and then we need a fifth as well, so A, B, C sharp, D, E. So we've got A, C sharp and E, that's the root, the third and the fifth of every A major chord. And we can see how that works on the fretboard using this shape once again. So the open fifth string, that's a note A, but in terms of intervals, that's the root or the 1. And next we've got this note here, that's an E, A, B, C sharp, D, E. This is the fifth. And next we've got another A note, so that's another root note. On the second string we've got our C sharp, A, B, C sharp. This C sharp is the third, and then if you like you can play the open top string as well, and that's another E, so that's another fifth. So in terms of the way this chord is constructed, we could describe it like this. We've got 1 or root, we've got 5, we've got 1 again, we've got 3, and then we've got 5 on top. Those are the intervals involved in this A major chord shape. And our major chord formula 1, 3, 5 tells us what we need to create this chord, and this contains all of the essential elements. We've got a root, we've got a third and a fifth. And notice that the notes aren't in order here. We've got a root, then a fifth, then another root, and then a third, but that doesn't really matter. It's still essentially an A major chord. So now not only have we got a chord grip, we know what notes we're playing, and most importantly, we understand the intervals, the note functions involved, and this is so important. As I've said, every chord type has an interval formula, and it's really worth committing these to memory, at least for the most common chord types. And there aren't that many to memorize, probably only 7 or 8 Also common chord types, maybe a few more than that if you're into jazz, but it's not a big deal to get this stuff memorized, and it's a really worthwhile thing to do. And then you're going to be in a position to understand your finger shapes in terms of intervals. So let's once again see how this works on the fretboard. So we've had an A major chord here. What about an A minor chord? And I'm sure you all know this A minor chord grip, this shape. But what's going on in terms of the intervals here? And the interval formula for every minor chord is 1 flat 3 5. And throughout this video I'm going to try and put these formulas up on screen. I'll put some chord diagrams up there as well, just to make it very clear what it is I'm talking about here. But the minor chord, 1 flat 3 5, and you can see that visually on the fretboard as well. So if you think in terms of intervals, so this is the root, the fifth, there's another root, those notes are unchanged. The note we're changing when an A chord becomes an A minor is this one here. So we've actually gone from the third, the major third, to give it its full name, down to the minor third or the flat third. So whenever you flatten something, you're going down by 1 fret, and the A major chord becomes an A minor chord. So now we've got root, fifth, root, flat third, and we've got another fifth on top. So we're now understanding this shape in terms of intervals. It's very clear on the fretboard. You can see just changing that one note. That's the only difference between a major and a minor chord is the third. So you've got the major third or the third, and then the flat third down by 1 fret. What about a sus4 chord? The formula for that is 1 4 5. So we're actually replacing the third with the fourth, and you could play it like this. And you can see on the fretboard there, instead of playing the third at the 2nd fret, the neighbouring note, if you go 1 fret higher, is the 4th. So we're replacing that third with the 4th. So now we've got root, 5th, root, there's the 4th, and you can have another 5th on top if you want. That's an A sus4. We could kind of go the other way. If we play the A minor and then you lift up your first finger, you've got an A sus2. An A sus2 is root, 2nd and 5th. So again, you're not playing the third, you're replacing the third with the 2nd, and the 2nd is actually 1 fret below the flat third. So by lifting up that first finger, we're introducing the open B string. That's an A sus2. So we've now actually got 4 very closely related chords. We're just changing the note on the 2nd string, and we've got A major, A minor, A sus4, A sus2. What about 7th chords? Let's start with a major 7th chord. The formula for that is root, 3rd, 5th and 7. So remember, these are relating to the notes in the A major scale. We're dealing with the A family of chords here, and we could play that like this on the fretboard. So it's open 5th string, and I've got 2nd fret, 1st fret, 2nd, and then open top string. And in terms of intervals here, we've got root, 5th, there's the major 7, then we've got the 3rd and the 5th. So we're just changing one note from our A major chord starting point, and the major 7 lives 1 fret below the root of any chord. So if you've got an A here, you just go down 1 fret. That note there is our major 7th. So in terms of the way this chord is voiced in terms of the intervals, we've got root, 5th, 7, 3rd, and then 5th again. So it's a major 7th, so it has that major 3rd. That's the note which makes something major or minor, but we're introducing another note on top of that. We've now got 4 different notes in this chord. We've got A, E, let's say G sharp, and then we've got a C sharp, and then we're just doubling up the E with the open top string. That's A major 7. What about an A7 or an A dominant 7 to give it its full name? The formula for that is 1 3 5 flat 7. So if we just take the A major 7 that we just played, and we know that this is the 7, if we flatten that note, we just go down 1 fret, or here we just go to an open string, and we've got an A7 chord just by changing that one note. We've got this open 5th string, 2nd fret, open 2nd, open top string, that's root 5th. Now we've got a flat 7, that's the 3rd, and that's the 5th. It's an A dominant 7th chord. A minor 7th chord, that's 1 flat 3 5 flat 7. That's our formula. So we could start from the A7 chord, and the only difference is we need to flatten the third. So we've already done that, going from the A major to the A minor. But if we just do that, we've now got open second, open first, and open. That's A minor 7. We've got root 5th, flat 7, flat 3rd, and then 5th on top. So we've got 3 of the most common 7th chords here, and we're really just adjusting the 3rd, adjusting the 7th until we've got the appropriate notes in place. So we've got the major 7th chord there. We can flatten that major 7th, so play a minor 7th, that's the dominant 7th chord, and then we can flatten the 3rd for our minor 7th chord. So it's important to start, you're seeing these intervals on the fretboard. I know that I've got my 3rd on the 2nd string that I can play around with. I've got my 7th here that it can be a major 7th or it can be a minor 7th, so you can kind of juggle with those notes. And there are, of course, a lot of other chord types that we could play around with. I'm not going to go through everything in this video, but the same principles are going to apply, so I'll just give you another couple of examples. What about an A7 sus4 chord? So the formula for this particular chord is going to be 1, 4, 5, flat 7. So the sus, again, we're replacing the 3rd with the 4th, but we've got the flat 7 in there as well, so we could play it like this. We got a root 5th, that's our flat 7. This is our 4th that we came across when we were just playing the basic sus4 chord. And then we've got an open top string. So A7 sus4 is a beautiful sounding chord. What about another example? Maybe this, more unusual one. This is an A minor major 7. So the formula of that chord, it's a root flat 3rd, 5, and then 7. So in this chord you can see we've got a root, there's a 5th, there's our natural 7, our major 7. Then we've got the minor 3rd as well. And then we've got the 5th on top. So a nice kind of tense sounding chord. It's A minor, major 7. A minor with a major 7. Now I see the chords that we've just covered as all belonging to the same kind of A family. And we've got 10 or so chords here, really without too much effort. I mean, yes, there's a little bit of theoretical information to absorb and memorize, but it's much easier thinking like this than memorizing a bunch of random finger shapes. All of these chords are related, and you can see how just by adjusting the 3rd or the 7th, you can create all of these different chord sounds, these different colors. And the great thing is, once you understand the intervals involved, it's very similar when it comes to other grips and other chord families. So let's move on and talk about some other options that we've got. I hope you're understanding the basic concepts here. I'm going to move a bit more quickly now and look at how this works using some other chords as a starting point. What about if we start with an E chord here? So the good news is it works in exactly the same way, and the intervals are pretty much identical. We've just moved everything over onto the lower string. So in an E major chord, we've got the root note there, that's the 5th root. Our 3rd is now on the 3rd string, and then we've got 2 notes doubled up on the top pair of strings. So the B, that's the 5th, and then we've got another root note on top. So the intervals, just one more time: root, 5th, root, 3rd, 5th, and root. And then we can just adjust this according to our formulas. So E minor is going to look like this. We just flattened the 3rd, so now we've got a G instead of a G sharp. Sus4, we could do this. So we've replaced that G sharp with an A. That's a sus4. The sus2 doesn't work quite so well in this situation just because of the way the guitar is tuned. You sometimes find that with shapes on the guitar, but all of the 7th chords work nicely. So we could play E major 7 like this. And remember, the 7th is just 1 fret below any of the root notes. So here we could just adjust this E down to a D sharp. It's E major 7. And what about E7? We can play like that, like this. So now we've got the flat 7 in there. So it's the major 7, and now a flat 7. E minor 7 we could just play like this. So we've now got root 5th, flat 7, minor 3rd in there as well. That's E minor 7, 7 sus4, could play like that. So it works in exactly the same way. I'm just seeing those intervals on the fretboard and then adjusting. We could perhaps take this D chord as our starting point. So starting from the 4th string, the intervals, we've got root, 5th, another root, and then the 3rd is on the top string here. So if we wanted a D minor chord, we're going to flatten the 3rd. So we've got this shape here. If you want a D major 7 chord, you could play it like this. So we're sort of taking that root note and we're replacing it with the major 7. It's D major 7, and to go from the D major 7 to the D7, the D dominant 7, we're going to take that 7 and make it a flat 7. So that's a D7, D minor 7. We could flatten the 3rd. So just take the 2nd fret note on the top string down by 1 fret. It's a D minor 7. And I'm sure that many of you know these shapes already, but the important thing here is not really the shapes. It's about understanding what's going on in terms of the intervals, adjusting notes to find these different chord types. So now we've got kind of 3 different families of chords. We've got that A family of chords, we've got the D family, we've got the E family as well. Let's take this idea a bit higher up the neck then, and maybe we could play this D major bar chord. So this is a 5th string root major bar chord, and if you know your caged system, you will know that this chord shape is very closely related to our open A chord. It's really the same shape moved up the neck, so we could talk about this as being an A shape or an A form bar chord, but in this case it's going from a D root note, so we're going to call it a D. But the good news is that all of the intervals involved here are the same as when we're down at this end of the neck. So we've got a root note on the 5th string, then we've got the 5th, another root, that's the 3rd, and then we've got a 5th. So now we can just adjust those notes in exactly the same kind of fashion. So if you want a D minor, we know that we want a flat 3rd instead of the natural 3rd, the major 3rd, so we're just going to play this instead. That's a D minor, so root, flat 3rd and 5th. We can do a D sus4, so just moving up 1 fret from the major 3rd, D sus4, D sus2, could play like that. So we're just introducing this 5th fret note on the 2nd string. And it works the same way with 7th chords. So starting with a major 7th chord, that looks like this. So the major 7, remember, is just 1 fret below our root. So D is going down to this C sharp note. And if we take that note down again, we've got D7 or D dominant 7 to give it its full name. We could flatten the 3rd, and we've got a D minor 7. And then you could even flatten the 5th. You know, why don't we flatten the 5th? So we've got the 5th here, and the 7th fret on the 4th string. If we take that note down by 1 fret, I'm just going to have to rejig my fingers a little bit. We've now got this shape. So this is a D minor 7 flat 5. So some of you might not know this chord, but it's a common chord in jazz music, so it's a worthwhile one to know. We can maybe adjust this and play a diminished 7th chord. So diminished 7th chord, the formula is root, flat 3rd, flat 5th, and a double flatted 7. So it's slightly unusual, this double flatted 7, but all that means is you've got your major 7, you can flatten it once, you can flatten it twice, and now we've got a D diminished 7th chord. So that's actually quite a nice drill to do, just changing one note at a time and going through all of those different types of 7th chords. So you could start with the major 7, and then you're going to flatten the 7 for a D7. We're going to flatten the 3rd for a D minor 7, flatten the 5th, D minor 7 flat 5, and then we're going to flatten the 7th, flatten the flat 7th, and we've got the D diminished 7th. So that's a nice little 7th chord drill. Bunch of different chords, but I'm just thinking in terms of those intervals, so adjusting the 3rd, adjusting the 5th, adjusting the 7th. So give that exercise a try. It's a really useful one, and don't just whiz through those chord shapes as fast as you can. Do this really slowly and think about what's going on. You might just like to play the chord and then name the intervals out loud. So root, 5th, 7th, 3rd, and then you describe what you're doing. So now I'm going to play a dominant 7th chord, which means I'm going to flatten the 7th. So now I've got root, 5th, flat 7, 3rd, and so on through that sequence of chords. So you're really kind of understanding what is going on. And I'm just going to go a little bit more quickly now. Let's see how this works based off of this A major bar chord shape, so a 6-string root bar chord, which is related to our open E chord. So root, 5th, root, 3rd, 5th, and root. We can flatten the 3rd. We've got A minor. We can play A sus4, introducing the 4th. Maybe we could do an A sus2 here. We could perhaps do it like that. So get the thumb over the top, and I've introduced this B note here. That's the 2nd. We've got all of our 7th chords, our 7th chord family. So we could play major 7 like this, and then just adjusting one note at a time. That same kind of 7th chord drill. We've got dominant 7, minor 7, minor 7 flat 5. I could play it like that, just on the lowest 4 strings. You could play that flat 5 up an octave here as well. That's kind of a common jazz version of that chord. And then going from the A minor 7 flat 5, we could flatten that 7th once again, and we've got a diminished 7th chord. So that's frets 5, 6, 4, and 5. So it's another nice little 7th chord drill that we've got there. So major 7, dominant, minor, minor 7 flat 5, and then diminished 7. We could do that on the top 4 strings as well in this kind of D shape. So apologies, the chords are kind of coming thick and fast now, but I hope this is making some kind of sense. But we've got major, root, 5th, root, 3rd, flatten the 3rd for minor. I could play our 7th chords, major 7, dominant 7, minor 7, minor 7 flat 5, diminished. I hope this isn't too overwhelming. I want to stress that it's really just understanding this stuff in terms of intervals, and the theory is all exactly the same in all of these different families of chords. So we've just got our open chord families now. We've got 3 kind of bar chord families of chords. This approach works with any chord type you can think of. I've covered a lot of the most common chord types, but it's going to work with extended chords, altered chords. So let me give you a few further examples. What about a 9th chord? So the formula for a dominant 9th chord: root, 3rd, 5th, flat 7, 9. And one common way of playing that on the fretboard would be like this. This is a D9 with a 5th string root. You might already know this chord. It's quite common in blues and in rock and roll. So we've got 5th fret, 4th fret, 5, 5, and 5. So in terms of the intervals here, we've got a root note, then we've got the major 3rd. So this is slightly different. We have had the 5th on this string, but now we're playing the major 3rd, kind of 1 fret below the root. This is the flat 7 as before. This note here, the 5th fret on the 2nd string, is the 9th, and one way of finding that 9th is to go 2 frets below the major 3rd. So we know that the major 3rd from our D major chord is here. Go down 2 frets. It's the 2nd, which is the same as the 9th. So that's our 9th. Then we've got the 5th on top. So root, 3rd, flat 7, 9, and 5th. That's our voicing for D 9th chord. Let's extend again. What about a D11 chord? So a formula for a D11 chord: root, 3rd, 5th, flat 7, 9, 11. There's kind of a lot of notes in there. Common thing to do is to omit some of those notes when you're actually finding these chords on the guitar. So a common way of playing D11 on the guitar might be like that. It's easy enough to play. It's just 5, 5, 5, 5, and 5. In terms of intervals, we've got a root. This is the 4th, which is the same as the 11. So root, 11. There we've got the flat 7. There we got the 9. And then we've got the 5th on top. It's actually quite common to omit the 3rd from that particular chord. So that's one way of playing a D11. D13 we could play like this. So this is our D9, but we're reaching out with the pinky to play the 7th fret on the top string. And this note that we've introduced is the 13th. So the 13th is the same note as the 6th, but it's a kind of an octave higher. So that's going to be a B note. Find that B note up there. So now in terms of intervals, root, 3rd, flat 7, 9, and then we got the 13 on top. It's a lot of notes to play on the guitar, so commonly you would leave one or more of the notes out from this chord. So in this particular voicing, there's no fifth in there. It doesn't particularly matter for the feeling of this chord though. If you need to play some complicated sounding jazz chords, altered chords with flat nines, sharp nines, all of that kind of thing, it's actually quite easy if you're thinking in these terms. We've already got a D9 here. We know that this note is the 9, so we can play around with that note. We can take it 1 fret higher. We've got a D7 sharp 9. That's the Hendrix chord. You can see that the sharp 9 is there, 1 fret above our 9th. And we could go the other way. If you want a D7 flat 9, you replace the 9 with a flat 9, like that. So just thinking about that note on the second string works the same way with the 5th. If we go back to our D9 chord, got the 5th on top, we can sharpen the 5th or we can flatten the 5th. So D9 sharp 5 or D9 flat 5. Could we do that like this? There we go. So not a chord I play particularly often, but I can find it because I know that the 5 is there and I can just adjust it to make that shape. So that's a D9 flat 5. And we can have things like this perhaps. So this is a D7 sharp 9 sharp 5. Sharp 9 sharp 5. We could go the other way with a flat 9 and a flat 5 on top, or we could kind of mix and match any of those altered notes. So it's quite an easy way to come up with those kind of quite scary sounding chords. I've not memorized a whole load of grips for those altered chords, but I can find them on the rare occasions when I need to play chords like that. So I think I'm going to leave it there for this video. Of course, I've only scratched the surface of the possibilities here, but the important thing is just to start thinking in terms of intervals. So every chord you play, you want to understand it in terms of the function of the notes within that chord. That's about it for today's video. Really hope you found it useful, and I realise I've covered quite a lot of ground in this video. There's been a lot of information, so it might be one of those lessons that you want to bookmark and come back to at various points when you're ready to digest more of this stuff. But no matter what stage you're currently at on the guitar, the most important thing here is just the general concept of starting to think in terms of intervals, really understanding what's going on behind the shapes that you're playing, and that's a really powerful concept that I hope you're going to find useful as you sort of move forward with your guitar studies. So thanks very much for watching. I'm going to be putting a bunch of chord diagrams up on the Patreon page to support this video, so check those out if you're interested, and I'll see you next time.